Windows 10 is officially reaching the end of its life. No more security updates, no more official patches, no more protection from newly discovered threats. So here's the big question. Does that mean your PC instantly becomes dangerous in 2025? Or is there a way to keep running Windows 10 safely even without updates? Because let's be honest, millions of people are not ready to switch. Some PCs can't run Windows 11. Some users don't like Windows 11. Some businesses rely on older software that works perfectly fine on Windows 10. And many people simply don't want to upgrade hardware just because Microsoft says it's time. So what actually happens when Windows 10 reaches end of life? Here's what most people don't understand. When Microsoft stops issuing updates, the operating system doesn't suddenly break. Your PC doesn't shut down. Your apps don't disappear. Everything keeps working exactly the same. The risk comes later. As new vulnerabilities are discovered, they won't be patched. That means if your system is exposed directly to the internet with default settings, over time it could become more vulnerable. But here's the key word, could, because risk depends on how you use your system. And this is where things get interesting. Running Windows 10 safely after end of life isn't about ignoring security, it's about reducing your attack surface. Attack surface simply means how many ways someone can reach your system. The fewer doors you leave open, the safer you are. For example, do you really need remote desktop enabled? Do you need open network ports? You need unnecessary background services running? Most people don't. Hardening Windows 10 means turning off what you don't need. It means using a strong firewall. It means using a modern browser with built-in sandboxing. It means avoiding sketchy downloads and unknown software. And it means thinking differently about your setup. Instead of treating Windows 10 as a constantly connected, fully exposed machine, you can treat it as a controlled environment. There's also something else most people overlook. Modern browsers like Chrome, Edge, and Firefox have their own security layers. They sandbox websites. They isolate tabs. They receive their own updates independent of the OS. That already reduces a huge percentage of common attack vectors. Another major factor, your router. Most home users sit behind a NAT firewall without even realizing it. That means outside devices can't directly connect to your PC unless you manually open ports. That alone blocks many automated attacks. But here's the part people don't like to hear. Security isn't just about patches. It's about behavior. If you're downloading random cracked software, clicking unknown email attachments, and disabling antivirus protections, no amount of updates will save you. On the other hand, if you use common sense browsing habits, strong passwords, two-factor authentication, and basic firewall rules, your risk drops dramatically. Now, let's be realistic. Is running an unsupported OS as safe as a fully patched one? No, but unsupported does not automatically mean instantly compromised. And that's where fear-based headlines often exaggerate the situation. The real strategy isn't denial, it's layered protection. You can disable unnecessary services, use a limited user account instead of admin, keep browsers and security tools updated, avoid exposing your system to the public internet, back up your data regularly, and here's where it gets even smarter. You can combine Windows 10 with Linux. A dual boot setup lets you keep Windows for the software you need and use Linux for browsing, banking, email, and daily tasks. That way, even if Windows becomes less secure over time, your most sensitive activity isn't happening there. It's not panic, that's strategy. Because the truth is, Windows 10 isn't dead in 2025, it's just no longer maintained. And there's a big difference between those two things. But the real question is, How far can you realistically push this strategy? And what are the exact steps to make Windows 10 as safe as possible long term? That's where we go next. Alright, so let's move from theory to practical steps. If you're serious about running Windows 10 safely after end of life, you need to think like this. Minimize exposure, limit privileges, control what runs. First, let's talk about user accounts. One of the biggest security mistakes people make is running their computer as an administrator all the time. If malware executes while you're using an admin account, it has full system control immediately. Instead, create a standard user account for daily use. Keep your admin account only for installing software or making system changes. This one change alone dramatically reduces the damage potential of most threats. Next, disable what you don't use. Remote desktop. Turn it off if you don't need it. File sharing across networks. Disable it. Unnecessary startup programs. Remove them. Every service you don't need is just another possible doorway. Now let's talk firewall. Windows has a built-in firewall, and most people never touch it. But it's powerful. You can configure outbound rules, not just inbound ones. That means you can control which apps are allowed to access the internet. If a random unknown program tries to phone home, it gets blocked. That's smart hardening. Another major step. Browser isolation. In 2025 and beyond, most attacks come through browsers, not through the operating system directly. So use a modern browser that still receives updates. Keep it updated. Use built-in security features. Consider installing privacy-focused extensions like content blockers. Even better, use a separate browser for sensitive tasks like banking. Now let's talk about software. Stop installing unnecessary programs. The more software you install, the more potential vulnerabilities exist. Keep your system lean.
Only
Install what you truly use. And avoid outdated third-party tools that are no longer maintained. Then there's backup strategy. If you're running an unsupported OS long-term, backups are not optional. Use an external drive. Keep at least one offline backup.
Esther.
Backups occasionally. If something goes wrong, your data is what matters most. Now, here's where the strategy becomes powerful. Consider using Windows 10 in a semi-offline role. If you need it for legacy software, great. Use it for that. But for browsing email, crypto wallets, online banking, consider Linux. A dual boot system is one of the smartest long-term setups. You boot into Windows when you need specific programs. You boot into Linux for daily internet activity. That way your exposed attack surface shrinks dramatically. Linux distributions receive frequent security updates. They're lightweight. And they're excellent for web-based tasks. This hybrid model gives you the best of both worlds. Now let's address something important. Security isn't about perfection. It's about risk management. Even fully updated systems can be compromised. Zero-day vulnerabilities exist. Social engineering works. Human error happens. The goal isn't to make Windows 10 invincible. The goal is to make it an unattractive target. Hackers go after easy systems, fully exposed machines, poorly configured setups, users who ignore basic practices. If your system is hardened, firewalled, limited in privileges, and not exposed publicly, you are dramatically lowering your risk profile. Now, should businesses run unsupported operating systems forever? That's a different conversation. Corporate environments have compliance requirements and regulatory obligations. But for home users with older hardware, the situation isn't black and white. You can extend Windows 10's usable life responsibly if you're disciplined. And discipline is what separates risky setups from safe ones. But here's the final piece. How long can you realistically do this? And when does it actually make sense to finally move on? That's what we need to talk about next. So how long can you realistically run Windows 10 safely after 2025? The honest answer is, it depends on you. It's not Microsoft. It's not headlines. Not fear-driven tech articles. It depends on how disciplined you are with your system. If you treat Windows 10 like it's still 2018, installing random software, clicking unknown links, ignoring security settings, then yes. Over time it will become riskier, but if you treat it like a controlled environment, you can extend its life far longer than people expect. Here's something important to understand. Operating systems don't suddenly become unsafe at midnight on their end-of life date. What happens is gradual. Over time, new vulnerabilities are discovered. Attack techniques evolve. Unsupported systems stop receiving fixes. But many vulnerabilities require specific conditions to be exploited. And if your system isn't exposed to those conditions, your risk stays much lower. Think about it like owning an older car. It doesn't stop working just because the manufacturer stops advertising it. But you may need to maintain it more carefully. Pay attention to how you drive. Place parts when needed. Windows 10 after 2025 is similar. Maintenance becomes your responsibility. Now, let's talk about when you should actually consider moving on. If you rely heavily on sensitive data, business records, financial operations, client information, upgrading to a supported OS is the safer long-term path. If your hardware supports Windows 11 without issue, upgrading may simply reduce stress. But if your PC doesn't meet Windows 11 requirements, you have options. One of the smartest long-term strategies is gradually transitioning instead of abruptly switching. Start learning Linux now. Install it on a second drive. Test your daily workflow. See what works. Most people are surprised by how much of their daily activity is browser-based. Email, browser documents, browser or LibreOffice streaming, browser, social media browser. If 80% of what you do lives inside a browser, then your dependency on Windows may be smaller than you think. That realization is powerful, because once you reduce dependency, your flexibility increases. Now here's the balanced truth. Running Windows 10 forever is possible, but it's not a set-it-and-forget-it strategy. You must. Keep your router secure, maintain backups, avoid risky behavior, harden your system, monitor unusual activity. Security becomes active instead of passive. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It actually forces you to understand your system better. But eventually, technology moves forward. Driver support shifts. Software requirements change. Browsers may stop supporting older kernels years down the line. Think of this as a bridge, not a permanent destination. You can extend Windows 10's life responsibly. You can reduce risk dramatically. You can combine it with Linux for added protection. But you should also have a long-term plan. The goal isn't to resist change forever. The goal is to transition on your terms, not out of panic. Windows 10 isn't dead in 2025. It's just entering a different phase. If you approach that phase with awareness instead of fear, you can make smart decisions instead of rushed ones. At the end of the day, your security isn't controlled by one update. It's controlled by habits. Habits last longer than operating systems.